Hello. Um, Jumping on to share what started as a personal journal and quickly turned into me sharing some ideas that I've been exploring again recently around how much we need to be honest with ourselves about all of the things we feel, and how I work to create a balance between acknowledging and processing and owning and applying my emotional side to the more objective and rational aspects of life, and how I strike a balance between not being cold hearted and Vulcan and super logical about everything at the expense of my emotions, and not being so emotional and running so hot that I get lost in the sauce, like feeling a thing instead of really considering the whole situation as is required for the highest likelihood of success. And I was thinking about really, yeah, how I navigate, and what follows is me sort of rolling from a personal exploration into trying to capture an idea. And so this is my little intro to walk you in and say welcome, and that I hope these perspectives are of some benefit to you. All right, here we go. If I'm gonna be able to navigate effectively, I don't have to tell anybody else anything, but I have to be real with me. Be like, you feel things. I'm like, I do, but I also can't allow feeling and knowing that I feel to be the primary driving force informing and directing my choices and actions. So, yeah, on one hand, I feel like it's really important that I'm honest with myself about all of the things I feel, even when they're irrational, embarrassing, contradictory, right? I've still got to be able to say, like, this is what I actually feel. And in knowing and feeling that, not surrender my agency to it. To say, look, I'll I'll take the time, I'll give this its due, I'll acknowledge the impact it has on me and the influence it bears. I will take that into account as I zoom out and look at this from a broader view and see how it all fits together. It's not to be thrown out, and it's not to be put at the helm. It's to be folded into the total equation and honored as the factor that it is, but not overinflated to be the reason for everything. So, this is a key distinction between suppressing and denying and avoiding our feelings and completely surrendering to them. It's that you don't really want either. The idea is to find a place where they get their proper attention and care, and also inform what's happening to the extent that it's appropriate, but out the other side, that we don't surrender good sense and integrity to an emotional state that is at best temporary, because all feelings come and go, and outcomes, results, they last. They're in the permanent record. So to stay focused on what goes into the permanent record while acknowledging that how I feel is going to legitimately inform that to an extent such that the other concerns and responsibilities are attended to, provided for, right? Everything in its place. And yeah, it's as I go through these ideas more and more, I find that most things are about finding the balance, and this is the concept of the middle way. It's not all this or all that. It's where the two blend in harmony and strike a balance that allows for the most and the best possible. And I think that really being able to look at all the forces and influences within and around us, and to understand that we've got to find the spot on the spectrum with each of those things that get plugged into that equation and do ultimately give rise to a clear answer. And sometimes I have to admit, I don't always like the answer it yields. Sometimes I'm very much displeased with where that leads me. But in experience, I can say that when I abide by what is the result of that sound process, I get much better results than I would have expected or hoped for. And when I go with the emotional response, say, I know, but I feel this way and I want this, there's an exponentially higher probability that I'm not going to get the results I want, and that long term it could cost in other areas, it could impact other things sort of sequentially, like this happened and then that happened, and then because of this I came out here, and you can trace it back a certain amount to be like, yeah, because you didn't do the sound thing, you did what felt right. And I will proselytize for knowing and going with our feelings in so many regards, in terms of creative processes, in terms of relating to others, in terms of so many things we do, that does factor much more substantially than other elements in the equation. And so there's a place for it, but when I apply that in the wrong place, I kind of only have myself to blame, and I can see what the pattern is. And so even when I don't like what the clear process yields, if I honor it, I like what that yields, right? And when I fight with it and try to negotiate and let other aspects drive the bus, it doesn't tend to turn out so well. Sometimes I get lucky, but I wouldn't say that's the reliable way of getting where I'm headed. And that's a lot of the operation for me. It's just getting where I'm headed. Like, what are you doing now? Where do you need to be? How do you orient to that? What do you need to equip yourself with to get from here to there? When you get there, how do you fall in on what's awaiting you? These things, and be very focused on that, and not at the same time deny, suppress, avoid my emotions, even when I'm kind of maybe like, do I really feel this way? Like, yeah, sometimes we feel things that don't make sense to us, that we're not even proud of. We're like, I don't want to have to tell this to anyone else. And you don't, but you have to tell it to yourself. I do. I have to stop and be like, okay, let's be honest about this. I know you feel this, you think that, you believe this thing, you value that. These are all major drivers in what you do with this experience. But you also have to acknowledge that you have these weird little emotions over here that are, if you don't look at them and put them in their place, they're gonna like stage a revolt and flip the table on all of this. It would be the last minute. Alan Watts did a great piece about how you like research and you ponder and you consider and you plan and you reach a great decision, and when the moment comes you do whatever it is you were going to do in that moment anyhow. And yeah, this is sort of the default process, and I think that if we're aware of that and we do this part of the work, we can sort of intercept the play of that part of us that would come in and destabilize by saying, no, come here, get around it, bring it in, put it in its place, and get it to work for the whole program. Because sometimes we'll see all the rational sound things where you feel good about the way you think about that, you feel justified in the emotions you're having. But if you don't realize that this is also true and integrate that, you might come away with the wrong sum, I guess. It doesn't add up the same if that's not in the calculation. And so, how do I put this? We can know what we know and pick all the parts that we feel good about, but if we don't acknowledge the other pieces and bring that in, this is integrating the shadow. This isn't my idea. This goes back to the founders of modern psychology, right? But this is a very applied example of it, where I recently have had to do this with a few things where I feel like, for the most part, this is where I'm operating from. But when I bring this other part in, this other contrary, gnarly, unpleasant, emotional state that I would rather chuck out the window and keep driving, the problem is that thing's gonna run down the road after you and like flip your car. You gotta let it in and give it a ride. And so yeah, bringing that in, one, prevents it from wreaking havoc because it's unattended, and two, it allows it to actually benefit and serve the process by informing it and saying, okay, all these things are true, but also this. How does this temper all these other things. And I find that it's not a huge change, but it's a significant shift to where I'm like, oh, okay. So where I was going to be meek about it, maybe I need to be more assertive. Where I was going to be tender about it, maybe I need to be more reserved. Where I was going to be more reserved, maybe I need to offer more openness or sweetness to it, right? It puts that final tuning on it, that it's a slightly different key you're playing in. And yeah, I realize I do this kind of unconsciously. I've just developed strategies for wrangling all that I am and that all that we all are. We're all so many things. We're so many different aspects, and we're under so many influences that we're barely aware of. And I think that by becoming aware of it and working with it and applying these concepts in a very practical way, we can get better insight and better results and better ways forward, which is what this whole project is about for me. So here's hoping that that shines a light on a better way forward and is of some value. As always, I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next round. Take care.